In the mythic past of ancient Greece, stories of brilliant inventors, mythical creatures, and tragic heroes have been passed down through the generations. One of the most compelling tales revolves around Daedalus, a master craftsman whose genius gave birth to both the labyrinth that housed the fearsome Minotaur and the wondrous, yet fatal wings that carried his son Icarus to his doom. This is a tale of boundless ingenuity, imprisonment, hubris, and the inescapable consequences of disobedience. The genius of Daedalus. Daedalus was celebrated across Greece as the most skilled craftsman, architect, and inventor of his time. Hailing from the city of Athens, he was a genius whose inventions and artistry were unmatched. His mind was a forge of brilliant and often dangerous ideas, and his hands brought to life extraordinary creations. However, Daedalus's extraordinary talents came with a fatal flaw, an ego and an ambition that often placed him in precarious situations. Despite his immense reputation in Athens, Daedalus was driven out of the city after a grave incident. Jealous of his nephew Talos' growing talent as a craftsman and inventor, so much so that he feared Talos might one day surpass him, Daedalus committed an unforgivable crime. Talos had crafted remarkable tools, including a saw inspired by a fish's spine and a compass for drawing circles, demonstrating precocious ingenuity. In a moment of envy, Daedalus pushed his young nephew from the heights of the Acropolis. Cursed in exile for his transgression, Daedalus found refuge on the island of Crete, where he entered the service of King Minos. The Commission of the Labyrinth. King Minos of Crete was a powerful and ambitious ruler, and he recognized the value of Daedalus's talents. Minos had a formidable navy and dreamed of strengthening his rule over the Aegean. But his household was haunted by a terrible and shameful secret, a monstrous creature known as the Minotaur. The Minotaur was the offspring of Pasiphae, Minos's queen, and a magnificent bull that had been sent by Poseidon. The god had intended the bull as a sacrifice, but when Minos chose to keep it for himself, Poseidon cursed Pasiphae with an unnatural infatuation for the beast, leading to the birth of the half-man, half-bull monster. The Minotaur was an abomination, a symbol of the god's wrath and Minos's defiance. Fearing the creature and the disgrace it represented, yet unable to kill it, Minos sought a way to conceal it. He summoned Daedalus and commanded him to design a prison so intricate and inescapable that the Minotaur would be trapped forever. Daedalus, intrigued by the challenge and driven by his need to redeem himself in a foreign land, accepted the task. The construction of the labyrinth. For months, Daedalus toiled day and night, sketching designs and mapping a network of corridors so complex that even he could scarcely navigate them. He built a massive, multi-layered maze filled with twisting passages, false trails, dead ends, and a myriad of ingenious traps to disorient anyone who dared enter. The labyrinth was an architectural marvel, a structure where once inside, one would become hopelessly lost. The walls were high, the corridors dimly lit, and the sense of direction easily confounded. Even the air within the maze seemed thick with disorientation and dread. When the labyrinth was finally complete, King Minos was astonished by the structure's ingenuity. True to Daedalus's promise, the Minotaur was locked within the maze, and every year, 7 Athenian youths and 7 maidens were sacrificed to the beast as a form of tribute, a punishment imposed on Athens after Minos' son Androgeos had died there. The horror of the labyrinth grew, its reputation spreading fear throughout Greece, and the name of Daedalus became known not only for his genius but also for the dark purpose his creations could serve. Imprisonment and the wings of freedom. Despite his great service to King Minos, Daedalus's fortunes took a turn for the worse. Minos, who was a calculating and paranoid ruler, realized that Daedalus was a man of boundless skill and resourcefulness, qualities that could be dangerous in the wrong hands. Fearing that Daedalus might one day betray him or reveal the secrets of the labyrinth to his enemies, Minos imprisoned the craftsman and his young son, Icarus, in a high tower on the island of Crete. The tower was heavily guarded, and the seas surrounding the island were patrolled, making escape seemingly impossible. Daedalus, ever the problem solver, began to study the natural world around him. He watched the bird soaring freely over the sea, and an idea took root in his mind. If he and Icarus could not escape by land or sea, perhaps they could take to the air. Using the limited resources available, Daedalus began to fashion wings for himself and his son. He carefully constructed a framework of reeds and wood, covering it with feathers he collected over time. He bound the feathers together with wax, creating a structure that would allow them to fly. It was a delicate and meticulous process, but Daedalus was determined. When the wings were finally complete, Daedalus knew that they were both a marvel of engineering and a dangerous gamble. Before they took flight, he warned Icarus of the perils that lay ahead. He instructed his son not to fly too low, lest the sea spray dampen the feathers and weigh him down, nor too high, where the heat of the sun would melt the wax. "Stay in the middle path," Daedalus advised solemnly, "for that is the safest way." A flight in Icarus's folly. With their wings strapped securely to their backs, Daedalus and Icarus took to the skies. At first, the sensation of flight was exhilarating. The two soared above the sparkling waters of the Aegean, feeling the wind lift them and the thrill of freedom washing over them. Fishermen gazed upward in awe, mistaking them for gods. Daedalus maintained a steady, cautious course, keeping in mind the warnings he had given his son. But Icarus, overcome with the sheer joy of flying, began to test the limits of his newfound freedom. He climbed higher and higher, enthralled by the beauty of the world beneath him and the endless sky above. Daedalus, noticing his son's ascent, shouted warnings, but Icarus, lost in the ecstasy of his flight, paid no heed. The sun blazed fiercely in the sky, and as Icarus drew closer, the heat began to soften and melt the wax that held his wings together. One by one, the feathers fell away, and Icarus realized too late the consequences of his disobedience. His wings unraveled, and he plunged into the sea below, crying out in terror as he fell. Daedalus, heartbroken, could only watch helplessly as his son disappeared into the waves. He flew down to the spot where Icarus had fallen, but there was nothing he could do. Icarus had drowned, and the sea that swallowed him would forever bear his name, the Icarian Sea. Grief-stricken yet forced to continue, Daedalus made his way to the island of Sicily, where he sought refuge and mourned his beloved son. The legacy of Daedalus and the Labyrinth. The story of Daedalus and Icarus is more than a simple cautionary tale about disobedience and hubris. It is a reflection on the limitations of human ingenuity and the tragic cost of dreams unfulfilled. Daedalus, despite his brilliance, could not escape the consequences of his actions and the responsibilities of his creations. The labyrinth he built, a symbol of his ingenuity and his entanglement in the whims of powerful rulers, remained on Crete, a grim reminder of the darkness that genius can sometimes unleash. The tale of Daedalus continued, for he found favor with King Caucasus of Sicily and lived there for a time, using his talents for good. However, Minos did not forget the man who had once served him and sought revenge. Minos traveled across the Aegean in search of Daedalus, bringing with him a conch shell and a cunning challenge. He promised riches to whoever could thread a string through the spiral of the shell, knowing that only Daedalus could solve the puzzle. Daedalus, ever the inventive mind, tied the string to an ant and coaxed the insect to crawl through the shell, thus revealing his presence. When Minos came to claim him, Daedalus was protected by King Caucasus, whose daughters killed Minos by tricking him into a scalding bath. The story ended with Daedalus escaping his former tormentor but forever haunted by the loss of Icarus and the legacy of his own creations. The timeless tale. The myth of Daedalus and Icarus continues to captivate us today, not just for the wonder of flight but for the complex themes of ambition, freedom, and the delicate balance between innovation and responsibility. It serves as a reminder of the perils of human aspiration and the consequences that can arise when we defy the natural order or lose sight of our limitations. As we ponder the wings that Daedalus crafted and the labyrinth that entrapped so many, we are left to marvel at both the boundless potential and the tragic fragility of the human spirit. Through this timeless story, we are reminded that in our pursuit of greatness, wisdom and humility must guide us, lest we, like Icarus, soar too high and pay the ultimate price.